Hello people. So I want to put together a concept now that is going to use some of my previous videos as fundamentals, as backup. I can't be explaining each one of these concepts again, and making one single video like this would have not been suitable, I don't think. It would have come along as a long, boring lecture. So this is how it's worked out. I want to use as background some of my previous videos, and this video might not make sense without them, but it might be fine. You know, like sometimes when you're meant to have, say, watched a previous episode of a series, you can watch it fine, there's no issue, and sometimes the plot is just too complex. But I will be going fairly quickly through concepts in order to bring around a central point. The plan here is to put forward the idea that we behave in different ways at different levels of energy, or different levels of harmoniousness or vibration, and this is kind of how society is. So in a war zone, everyone's in a low vibration as such. Then I want to show you how I think my human design and the concepts behind it link to these different levels of energy, and put forward myself as a wisdom person. And then I will speculate on how power and love, as these three elements from this video here, interact with these different levels of energy. The three videos that are, I think, particularly relevant is A, the concept of densities, I'll be talking about this, B, rejecting the healing path, and C, wisdom, power and love. And the background of the law of one and the human design is obviously what I'm talking about here. In a future video, what I may do is, now that I have summarized how this levels of energy thing works, I would like to then put forward ideas as to the kind of societal issues that will come forward when an energy moves up. So if society were suddenly to go from very, very dysfunctional to quite a lot better, if there was a sudden process like that, then how would different energy fields respond to this? What would be the challenges? For instance, a projector would be taken from what might be considered a fairly low place of being quite confused about the world and shot up into a position of leadership, as an example. So here we go. First, I'm going to begin with the concept of densities and something about wanderers that the Law of One talked about. It talked about us coming down here as various types of wanderers. I've talked about this concept in the concept of densities. The idea that you have someone at the fourth density level, which is love, someone at the fifth density level, which is wisdom, which is not love. So wisdom, the wisdom of selfishness often. And then at the very top, you unify these two concepts. What this means is that for the fifth density wanderer, the wanderer that is at the level of wisdom, they have a kind of full battery of love in a sense, but love that hasn't been given any wisdom. So it's a simple, uncomplicated version of love, which is not the same thing that the sixth density has up here. It's not a deep, changeable thing that is being actively worked with. It's just a thing that's kind of there. Then they have the wisdom as well, and the wisdom, fifth density wanderers, according to the law of one that are here now, are harvestable to sixth density. So they have fully done the wisdom. Everything's done well with the wisdom. They have the love, they have the wisdom, and they don't have any tendency to unify these two concepts. I mean, if you're at the very end of fifth density, you are probably beginning sixth density work, but as a basic energy, you're fully fourth, fully fifth, but you haven't started sixth. Now, we can see this specific concept in my chart. If you look at the chart here, so it starts from the split going from the 4426. As a side note, I think that the 4426 going up into the 2145 is not projected, and then the 4426 going up into the 5125 is projected. The 4426 is a basic, it's the way the person perceives the world and the way the person orientates themselves, and then if they decide to use all that wisdom for manifestation, then it is part of a manifesting channel, whereas if they are using that wisdom to kind of get lost in this G self here, then it's a projected channel. It needs to be invited out because it has no route to the throat. Energy doesn't travel down. This 5125 has to be invited by the 2145. It doesn't go down and travel up the throat on its own. The 25 can't go back to the 51 because the 51 is an energy. But this insight about the full fifth density and the full fourth density, all that stuff I was saying just a bit ago about the fifth density wanderer, I believe this is very strongly reflected in my chart because this is part of the wisdom that I wanted to come here and talk about. Whereas another fifth density wanderer out there has the same stuff going on a deeper level, but it's not obvious because it's just not something they're interested in. And perhaps the design is kitted out in a way that it's not even obvious to them in their everyday life. So here, as I have talked about in Rejecting the Healing Path, I talked about this in some depth. It's got some context here. For me, one of my big issues has been that I have a kind of difficulty deciding what direction I'm going, and I feel like I've got this a bit more recently. But we're going to start with the lowest vibration. This is the lowest vibration of my understanding of myself. I mean, I'm sure there's lower, but just from this metaphor's perspective, this is where I'm starting. So from my perspective, the undifferentiated love goes through the 5125 if it's the first thing being pushed. So if my energy goes into a kind of not self and I start thinking this love direction is the thing, so the love and not the wisdom, which is, like I said before, a bit of a step away from love and doesn't always see the value in it, in a sense. If I, through willpower, try and go this love route, that's a healing route, whereas if I go the 2145 route, that is more of a music, meditation, perhaps human design type of route. That's the wisdom. The music was more important, actually, in that analogy, I think, because that can then access the 5125. But who knows? We never really know about ourselves. It might be the human design as well, or as much or more important than. But anyway, we can see this clear fork, and we can see that I can go with the green ray version of love, which is kind of completed, so it's a very kind of good thing, and I will spiral off into the not self. Now, I talked a little about how this kind of creates frustration and confusion by trying to go that healing route, and I won't go through that again, but the point is that the lowest level is just a basic decision of who am I? And the not self very much likes the version of me that is just this serving thing. It's very liked by society to become that kind of slavish creature. And this is what I'm conceiving of, as I've said previously, as my lower vibration. I'm going to go through low, medium and high. I might go through high first because it brings us some understanding on medium. But at this level, I don't even know myself, so I don't even know if I'm the type of person that should be using this 4426 to go off and be a healer, or whether I should be using this 4426 to go off and kind of do this sacred path of music, in a sense. So we'll go to the highest vibration as I conceive it. Of course, since I haven't actually reached that vibration yet, I'm very likely to be wrong about it. But as I best understand it, so the highest vibration is that there is no more choice. There's no more question about going down this 5125. Now the 5125 has a different manifestation at the mid-level that we'll go to in a second. But at the highest level, you're stuck in the game, you're stuck doing your thing, you're supported by people, you can't walk back even if you wanted. And so the energy is pushing out of this 2145 as an individual, is disagreeable, which isn't encouraged by anything but a higher vibration. People want you to be slaves and do what they say. And all the projected channels, everything, the 5125, the 1156 and the 4426 is all feeding this 2145 that is doing most of the work. So that thing is pushing out. That's the real manifestor as such. And then at the mid-level, The person knows they can see the highest vibration, they can see what they should be doing, but they don't have the power in the real world to actually do it. This will be, I think, relevant in each one of our examples, wisdom, power and love, in a second, but for the moment we're just working with my conception of my chart. So the person knows that they should be doing this 2145, but as the limitations and the energies of the world come down, they have to do some of this 5125 on its own, like without the 2145, in order to function in the world, to gain positivity. Now, the law of one talked about how the fourth density just above us have these kind of wars, and although it wasn't explicitly said, how I understand or imagine this to be is that the fourth density positive sends love and puts the fourth density negative into entropy, because that's how the negative responds when they have been given that kind of energy that can't be controlled. And that's kind of what's happening here slightly. When an energy comes down and limits me, the energy gets pushed out into this G self and a loving energy gets pushed out. Therefore, I'm pushing against the forces that are coming against me. And because I don't have the power to actually push against the force that's directly moving against me, I push love out into the world through this kind of thing, through these videos perhaps, which pushes against all the limitations I might face. And also, just in general, if you're a positive wanderer, then love is always there in a sense. So that's that. We have the low, medium and high, and we're using me as a wisdom example. So the lowest level, very confused, not even knowing what I am, who I am, and all that kind of stuff. At the mid-level, you kind of know what you should do, but you're still in that mode of preparing and pushing against the world and doing enough of this sort of heart chakra stuff in order to strengthen the lower energy centers. When it gets to the higher vibration, just pushing through this 2145 and doing the manifester thing. Now, I talked about the different elemental types of people in a sense, love, power and wisdom in this video here, which I've already mentioned. And let's put these through this same model. So the love at the lowest level are people that are kind of vain, kind of messed up, very, very over emotional, completely out of control, and don't appreciate everything, always trying to fix the world but don't have the power or the wisdom to do so. When they get to the mid-level, they realize, oh, I should be a loving person, love is the point of all this, but the world is giving them too much crap to actually be able to do that right now. And then their highest vibration is to actually be very positive and loving, like Carla Vutka in the Law of One. With power, same sort of thing. At the very basics, they don't have any idea of who they are. They use their power disharmoniously because they care a great deal about ethics, but they don't apply it perhaps. Power, they're not ever to not know themselves, like I talked about with the wisdom one, because the power is really rooted to themselves in a very fundamental way. Then it gets to the middle and they're kind of fighting to have respect, status and all that kind of stuff, but it's miserable. They're not really enjoying it. It's a grind, so to speak. And then when they get to the top, they're respected and they're listened to, appreciated and stuff like that. And the process of getting power isn't a slog, it's just a thing. And so yeah, that is it. I went through that very fast. I don't know if a single person will be able to understand it. I suspect they will be, because no one's going to follow my channel for any period of time and not be thinking in the kind of way I think a little bit. But anyway, I also wanted to talk about this same idea of low, mid and higher when it comes to the actual human design types and the different ways that people might experience things. And eventually what I wanted to get to, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is if a society changes and moves forward very quick, then what is the potential difficulties as some people are thrown from the lowest position of not really knowing themselves into a literal high position. But that's not for right now. Anyway, thank you for listening.